Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Anton Dela Cruz. Anton is a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2024, and he is also the president of the Pride at Darden student organization. Anton and I connected to talk more about his background, how he decided to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, Pride at Darden's plans for the upcoming year, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Anton Dela Cruz. Anton, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Brett. Good to be here. I've listened to your podcast many times since even before Darden, so excited to be a guest.
Yeah, it's always wonderful. We have a longtime listener, first-time guest on the show. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your afternoon for this conversation. How's everything going? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It is beautiful in Charlottesville right now. Not too hot, sunny. And it's also Darden Friday, which is also known as Thursday. So I'm looking forward to getting my weekend started.
That's great. Anything exciting for your weekend?
It is jam-packed. So tomorrow morning, we're having the Darden Day of Service. And so I'm kind of taking a few hours to volunteer at a local nonprofit. And then after that, I'm going to be walking my dog and maybe doing a short hike.
All right. That sounds very like a typical Darden students weekend. Every time I've asked somebody that question on the podcast, they've had no shortage of things going on. Very, very rare for somebody to say, I really have no idea what I'm doing this weekend.
Well, the other big thing is, so on Sunday is the Global Food Fest. And so I've volunteered with other Filipino and Filipino-American students to represent our cuisine. And so last night, I think we rolled several hundred lumpia rolls. And so looking forward to doing that. I did that last year, and it was a lot of fun and tasty.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about the food that you decided to prepare. I'm not as familiar with those rolls.
Sure. So lumpia is basically the Filipino version of an egg roll. They are bite-sized and delicious, and I think easy entry into Filipino cuisine. The other thing we're planning to serve is a dessert called halo-halo, which is basically layered ingredients. So we have different types of canned fruits, condensed milk, and ube ice cream, which is a purple yam ice cream. And then last year, I manually shaved ice for every single serving. This year, we're buying shaved ice pre-prepared. And so I think it'll be less labor intensive, but I think it'll be a fun, cooling treat on Sunday.
Is it easy to find purple yam ice cream?
It is not. Last year, we bought every single box from Trader Joe's. And this year, my friend, who's also on my team, found jars of purple yam. I'm not sure if she's planning for us to manually make some ube ice cream, but I will find out this weekend what the plan is for that.
Wow. All right. Well, Global Food Festival, always a highlight of the fall event calendar. I was talking with a colleague about this event earlier, and she said, you got to get there early.
Absolutely. Last year, I was sort of pinned to the table. And so this year, I'm hoping now that we have a bigger team, that some of my teammates can man the table while I get to participate and actually eat the food from everyone else's table.
That sounds right. First year, okay, yeah, you're tied down, you're really busy. Second year, you should be able to roam a little bit more.
Absolutely.
That feels appropriate. All right.
We're going to pull the seniority card this year.
That's right. That's what benefits of being a second year. I have to believe it. So, well, Anton, so appreciate, again, you coming on the podcast to tell more about your story and your experience here at Darden. So before we get too far along the conversation, tell us more about your background. Who are you, and what did you do before coming to Darden?
I'm originally from New York, born and raised. I was born in the Bronx and then grew up in a city called Yonkers in Westchester County. I did my undergraduate degree actually in electrical engineering. And so I did that for probably 2 years before I realized that I didn't want to be an engineer. And so I thought about what else am I passionate about? The answer was creative writing. And so I sort of did this kind of 180 and finished out my degree studying specifically creative nonfiction. And so when I finished, I said, what do creative writing majors do? And my answer was, I guess they go to grad school. And so I made my way to Columbia, South Carolina, where I was studying for an MFA in creative nonfiction. And then I realized I didn't want to be a professor. And so I said, okay, well, gotta work somehow. And so I started a career in administration and operations for small businesses. I loved Columbia, South Carolina, loved the people and friends that I had met. And so I began work at an alternative weekly newspaper as their office and circulation manager, um, which was a lot of fun. It was a very casual kind of bohemian culture. Our office was a large converted historical warehouse, and our desks were basically wooden slabs that were just like placed next to each other. We had a ping pong table that we played ping pong on after our paper went to press. And so that was my first taste of kind of being involved in small business. Really enjoyed it, and then I got the opportunity to join a IT managed services startup. And so going from the newspaper industry to something more IT startup related, I thought would be a fun turnaround. I think you'll notice a pattern with me. I just like to switch it up every so often. And so at that IT startup, I got to do a lot of the on the ground planning. How are we going to run our business? What are the rules we're going to follow? How are we going to measure performance? And so it was a really rapid sort of education for me on what it takes to start a business. And so from there, most recently, I moved on to a consulting and project management company, and they manage projects involved in public-private partnerships in regional economic development. So very like focused on improving the local community. And so that's what drew me there. And so after a few years, I realized that I had been working with business owners and entrepreneurs really closely. And I wanted to also take part in that, but I didn't have any formal business training. And so that's when I decided to pursue an MBA, and that's what led me to Darden.
How did you get interested in Darden?
So funny story, Brett. I was looking for a business school and just doing my research. Someone had mentioned, hey, you should check out Darden. They're very cool and I think aligned with your values. And I didn't know what they meant by that. And so I listened to your podcast, actually. And the one I listened to was with Ed Freeman. And I think the title of it was something like Creating a New Story for Business. And so I was interested in an MBA that was asking the same questions that I was thinking about. And so the things I was thinking about was, what is the role of business in society, and how do we create organizations, for-profit organizations that improve the world, if that's possible? And so he was talking about those questions on your podcast. And so for me, I had this image of business school as being very cutthroat, very, students whose main goal was to enrich themselves. And I thought, that's not me. And I want to find a place that cares about, transforming organizations. And so listening to Ed, I was like, okay, Darden is a place that does that. And so that's where I want to be.
Yeah, if you had those things on your mind, I can think of no better podcast episode for you to listen to than that conversation with Ed Freeman from our Office Hours series. It's so much fun talking with the faculty and about the research and what they're passionate about, and Ed obviously being so instrumental in bringing stakeholder theory to the world, and that it was a tremendous conversation. I really enjoyed it. Plus, you also get to talk about music as well when you talk to Ed Freeman, so that's so much fun. Of course, he's in the faculty band and a musician himself. So you come to Darden. You're a brand new first-year student. What section were you in?
I was in section D, Dragons, go Dragons, the best section, bar none.
What was that
Period.
adjustment like? Coming from all these different twists and turns in your professional career. You're now in business school, have a creative writing background. You started off considering engineering. What was the adjustment to business school like?
I think that the biggest adjustment for me was the pace of the academics. I was pre-warned that it would be an intense experience and that I should enter Darden prepared to prioritize and say no to things. And of course, intellectually, I was like, of course I'll do that. But emotionally, I was like, I will be the one exception who will do everything. I quickly found out after the first day that was not going to be the case. And I think the thing that I had to get used to was just the endurance, I think, that is required, especially in the first year core, where we were studying, we had 3 classes a day, new cases every day. We'll do that from 8 to 1, and then we'll have some sort of programming, either club or career, in the later afternoon. And then we'll meet with our learning team to prepare for the next day cases into the evening. And so it became a very full day that I had to be intentional about carving out space for time for reflection, because I think that's, for me, that's a very important part of managing my day and my energy, and not letting the experience kind of get away from me. And so I wanted to be very intentional about making time for myself, making time for my dog, because I do have to keep my dog alive while I'm at Darden. But yeah, I think the other thing that I had to adjust to was the kind of fast intimacy that happens among your section and among your learning team. I think that's a result of, with our sections, right? We see the same people in the same classes for 3 quarters for a large amount of our day. And so there is a quick bond that forms. And so for me, I'm more of an introvert. And so I wasn't sure how that was going to play out for me. But everyone at Darden is so nice and very accommodating for meeting you where you're at, in terms of, the level of interaction you want to do. And so there were so many events going on that I felt the pressure to possibly say yes. But I also felt like if I said no, that I would be invited to the next one, and it was okay.
Yeah, I think sometimes when people think about Darden, case method, participatory learning, they think, oh, you got to be an extrovert to be a student here. And I will say, from talking to people on the podcast, you do not have to be an extrovert. You could be an introvert, and you can find your own path here. What would you say to those people who kind of wonder about this kind of more social learning experience, right? You're hearing all these different perspectives. You're having to speak up and participate in class. As an introvert yourself, what would you say to folks who might have that question?
Yeah, I think that there is an anxiety about being wrong that some people might have. And participating in class is not about getting the answer right or having the answer that ends the conversation, right? The participation part of the classroom is about advancing a conversation, right? It's not about you giving an answer in a lecture, right, and ending it. It's more about, how do I guide the conversation forward, right? Or how do I better, elucidate a concept for the other people in my class, right? If you are already an expert in accounting, right? You're not there to learn the basic concepts, but you are there to be able to practice communicating those concepts to other people who don't have that background, right? And I think for me, that part is the one of the kind of like cornerstones of the case method and being in a Darden classroom. It's being able to either, learn the content, save space, non-expert, ask all the questions, ask the questions again. And then from the other end, being able to practice communication, right? And distilling things down into either simpler terms, examples, analogies, right? Using the full kind of toolbox of communication. And as like a writer, that was very exciting for me, right? Because my particular class that like was my jam was ethics. And so being able to kind of play that role, having no finance or accounting expertise, but being able to speak well about ethics was a treat in quarter 3.
Yeah, ethics being one of the required classes students take in the core curriculum here. It's obviously probably not a huge surprise to our listeners that this class was on your mind when you came to Darden, just given that you were thinking about the questions that you were thinking about as you started on your MBA journey. What was it like to take the ethics course? What'd you feel about that class?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I think that by quarter three, like I said, you do kind of bond with your section mates pretty quickly. You can imagine that having a discussion around ethics and the different viewpoints can be somewhat contentious. But I think my section had really developed a comfortable space to disagree, right? Like we can have, even I would say heated disagreement, but still be friends afterward and want to hang out and maybe even respect each other's viewpoints a little more. I think one of the things you have to be prepared for in a class like ethics is that there is no final answer. And it really is about the process of questioning through kind of the different frameworks, absorbing other people's viewpoints, and then finally coming to your own decision, which does not have a kind of stamp of approval that is universal, right? It's more about being intentional about the decisions you make and the reasoning behind those decisions and being able to defend them.
Was there a case that you read in ethics that still sticks with you, or a discussion that you and your classmates had that you still think about?
I think sometimes, yes, there is. And I think it's particularly surprised me because of the final place I landed, which was not one I expected to. So in brief, the case was around whether a pharmaceutical company should fund research to develop a drug, basically not for profit. And so oh, this might get me in trouble, Brett. But I had based on kind of the thinking that I was going through, I had expected to always kind of be on the side of course we're going to develop this drug. It's good for the world. But where I landed after considering, reading the case, going into the classroom was actually we can't do this because this sets a bad precedent, and that if we develop this drug, I don't see how we stay in business, developing drugs for free. And so I went into the classroom wanting my classmates to convince me otherwise, because this was not a position that I wanted to have. And so they did soften my position a bit, which I was glad for them to do. But again, there is no single kind of answer, only a viewpoint that you have that needs to be defended. And sometimes a viewpoint that you have, you want it to be challenged successfully because you can't find a way out of it.
And we had a mock class with Andy Wicks, a member of the faculty who teaches business ethics, ultimate questions, these kind of classes here at Darden. And he was talking to this mock class. The last thing he left this prospective students with was, what is it that would change your mind? As you think back on this discussion, what piece of information, what argument would ultimately cause you to change your perspective, your opinion here? And I mean, that's not a question that gets asked much these days, right? People are very entrenched about their opinions and ideas. And I just thought that was such a great thing to throw out there, because it sounds very true to your experience in this class. Like going to class, like, I want to hear what other people have to say. Convince me that this is not what we should do. I want to have people kind of present other alternatives.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I definitely listened to that class or episode or class from Andy Wicks. Yeah, no, I 100% agree that when we talk about organelles of transformation, or we talk about the MBA or Darden experience being transformational, it's hard to transform if you're not willing to change your mind, right? And so, what is the phrase? Strong opinions loosely held. Kind of taking that approach of having an opinion, expressing it, but then I guess there is a certain enjoyment or revelment in having those opinions challenged, like not seeing it as, hey, you're wrong, so that is some comment on your character intellectual acuity, but rather it's just kind of part of the process and fun of being in a classroom full of smart people that have different viewpoints.
Well, I loved your point around advancing the conversation. I think oftentimes in school, we're so conditioned to thinking about your answer is either right or wrong, right? If you raise your hand, you better know the right answer. And when I talk to faculty, I talk to students here, it is about moving the conversation forward. Even a wrong answer, can be helpful to the conversation. Just put it out there. Continue the conversation. It will all get cleaned up. It'll all get clarified as you go along. I think that's a big shift from where people expect MBA classroom conversations to be. This kind of like, we're trying to advance the conversation, trying to work towards a decision here. That's different than what people typically have in mind.
Yeah, I mean, if decisions were easy and easily collapsible into a single correct answer, there wouldn't be a point to an MBA, because we would just have the answer and people would always make the right decisions, right? The more interesting problems are the ones with multiple possible answers, right? The most interesting complex problems and the most important ones are ones where there are, different stakeholders with different priorities, and you're the manager having to make the decision of, what is the balance? What are the trade-offs I'm making? So one, you have to be aware of the content of your decision, right? Understanding the ripple effects it'll have on everyone else, and accepting that these are the trade-offs you're making for your decision.
Well, Anton, how's your second year going? Second year is a time of electives, club and organization leadership, all kinds of things. So how's second year going so far?
I have to say second year, they say second year is the best year, or second year best year. I find that for me to be true. Like you said, second year is made up of all electives. And so all my classes are ones that I picked, either because I like the subject or I've had previous experience with professors and I really wanted to take them again. In terms of club leadership, so I'm president of Pride at Darden, and that's been really ramping up these past few weeks in terms of planning new events, getting to know the first years, and actually we're preparing for RAMBA, which is the professional conference for LGBTQ MBA students. And so my days have been very busy between keeping the pace with academics, but also kind of like leading Pride at Darden and hoping that people show up to our events.
Is there a class you're taking right now that you're really excited about or really enjoying?
I think so I'm kind of going back to my roots in electrical engineering. There's a class called data science, which I've been really enjoying because I'm getting to use some of my dormant programming knowledge. So again, this is an area of experience that I can bring to the classroom that my other classmates might not have. And then I just find it fascinating the way we can use data to kind of make predictions and make better decisions based on that. I think also today, we're talking about AI and machine learning and all of that, and it's very cool, but also I think most people who talk about it don't actually know what's going on inside the black box. And so this is kind of like moving towards like maybe slightly opening that box for me. And so I'm really excited. There's a weekly competitions that we have to see who can create the most valuable model. And so I've been having a lot of fun working with my team to try to outcompete everyone else in terms of predictions.
That's great. Have you been able to do anything to kind of stay connected with that sort of creative writing or writing interest that you have?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a daily practice. I think that since my time at Darden, the format and length of work I do has changed. So in creative writing, I mostly write what are called lyric essays, which is a hybrid form between poetry and prose. And so typically, my work is between 10 and 20 pages. But now I've been really getting into what we call flash nonfiction, which is more like, it has different definitions, but for me, it's like 500 words. And so you kind of fit it in where you can. And so I've been keeping up with that in terms of the creative side. The other thing that there's this club we have at Darden called Darden Stories, where it's an opportunity to tell a story to the class, and I've gone to several of those, and I really enjoy it. People typically tell stories about their lives that are meaningful and poignant to them, and so it's kind of a safe space to kind of be vulnerable, which I found very valuable in terms of creating connections, and getting to know my classmates even more so. And even faculty sometimes participate in Darden Stories, and it's a highlight when I get the chance to go.
Yeah, it's a really cool organization. We've had some of the leadership from Darden Stories on um, before, and it's, I mean, such a tremendous thing that people feel comfortable being vulnerable in that way, opening up in that way, sharing um, these stories from their own lives. It says a lot, at least to me, it says a lot about the Darden community and the people who are here. So you mentioned Pride at Darden. You're leading this organization. Tell us a little bit more about what Pride at Darden is.
Sure. So Pride at Darden is the LGBTQ club at Darden. We're an affinity club. I see Pride at Darden's mission as kind of three-pillared, and excuse me for bucketing it like a consultant, but there are three kind of like big pillars of Pride at Darden for me. One is community, two is education, and three is advocacy. And so when I say community, I mean creating, making Darden a place where LGBTQ students can thrive and feel safe. In terms of education, it's working with allies who have questions, who may not know, what things about sexuality or gender and just have questions. And so creating a space to be able to address those. And then finally, advocacy, making sure that the Darden kind of like the Darden demography is reflects kind of the community at large, making sure we have a diverse student population, making sure that any policies or structures support us, and then encouraging the cases to be representative, and being able to see protagonists that we can identify with. Yeah, and we started in 1991. Not by we, I mean the organization, not particularly me. But we started in 1991, and we've gone under various names, which is really interesting. I think one of the really interesting things about Pride clubs at MBA programs, especially ones with a history of starting in 1991, is that you can imagine that the role of these clubs has changed over time, right? Even within the past 5 years, the LGBT community has, we've had a lot of wins, but also we've at times have faced different kinds of obstacles. And so I think that Pride at Darden is able to sort of adapt to the needs of the incoming students. And we're always looking to, get a sense for what support do students need when they come in, whether it be, more social events, or do they just need, time, one-on-one time to sort of talk to someone who's been there.
You mentioned that you're getting organized for the Reaching Out MBA or RAMBA conference. What other activities, events does RAMBA have planned for the coming months?
So Pride at Darden over the next academic year. So we started kind of these mini movie nights. So we're going to have monthly queer movie nights. First one we're watching actually tonight. So that'll be a lot of fun. It's just an opportunity for people to gather in a community space that's more low key, and not as intense. We have celebrate Thanksgiving with pride organizations from the law and medical schools in November. And then our big event happens in April, which is our annual drag show. And the drag show for me is the high social event of the year for Darden. So it is student run in terms of they perform, they choreograph, they market. Everything is student run, and we start basically in December recruiting people to participate in the drag show, and then they are rehearsing and getting their show ready by April. And we have faculty judges. And actually, so I've heard this said about our last drag show, but it's definitely a highlight for even long time Darden community members. And at our last drag show, there was an international student who said that, I never thought that I would be able to see someone from my country perform in a show like this. And it just made my heart grow like 3 sizes bigger to hear that. So, it sounds like it's just like a social like party, but really it has a lot of like deep significance for people who attend.
Yeah, I can imagine that's very profound, what you just shared, that comment from another student. I'm curious about your movie nights. Not to put you on the spot, but want to share any of the movies that you'll be screening?
Okay, well, our first one is Red, White, and Royal Blue, kind of keeping it light. This is the romantic comedy that recently came out based on a young adult novel, I believe. We have a list of potential movies. Some movies that are on that list is, oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot, right? I don't remember all the movies, but Carol is definitely one. Tu Wong Fu, if you're familiar with that one, that was the one with Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo. There, so those are 2 that are on the list, and I will keep you in suspense for what the other ones is. It'll be posted on our newsletter, so stay tuned.
Well, that's great. And I figure sometimes when you ask those kind of questions, you're putting the person on the spot. I'm just curious about what y'all were thinking about Carol, based on the Patricia Highsmith book, Price of Salt. Rooney Mara, Kate Blanchett. It was at I believe it was actually the Virginia Film Festival the year that it came out, interestingly enough. So full circle for Charlottesville. So, well, Anton, I'm curious, what are you looking forward to in addition to all these exciting Rambo events? What are you looking forward to as you round out your second year? Anything that you have circled?
I'm really, this might be cheesy, but I'm really looking forward to one, getting to know all the incoming first years, and just finding out what their stories are. But then also kind of deepening the relationships that I already have with my friends. I think that in the first year I think there was a tendency for me to, we're recruiting so heavily for our summer internships. We're trying to keep up with the academics. We're, doing all this stuff that I think for me, I'd really like to reconnect with my learning team, the close friends I met in first year, and just kind of making it a regular thing to just spend time with each other and, get to know them. And, because second year, it will go by fast, I think. And so, kind of treasuring this time we have together is going to be really important for me.
All right, Anton, last question for you here. Word of advice, something you encourage our prospective student listeners to keep in mind as they think about their own MBA journeys.
I think that I would say consider the MBA process and the application process an opportunity to reflect and celebrate your own story and your achievements, and use it as an opportunity to kind of reflect on your life and celebrate where you've been and envision where you could go. It should be like a fun process. I know taking like, GMATs and GREs is not fun, but the part about being able to craft your own story and really see yourself in a new light, and being asked to do that, see it as an opportunity.
It aligns with a lot of the advice that we give prospective students. Our boss, Donna Clark, talks about the importance of joy in this process. You're getting to dream, you're getting to think about what's possible for you, think about the future, kind of think about, gosh, if I did this MBA program, what could I do? Where could I go? That should be exciting. And also, you're taking stock of all the incredible things you've accomplished over the course of your life. So much of the work that you've done, well, so much of the work that goes into the application process is already done. It's behind you, right? Now you're just going to put the application together, figure out how you're going to craft that narrative, tell your story through the application itself. But hopefully that's a joyful experience. I know it can seem like a lot of work, as you mentioned, studying for the GMAT, GRE, standardized tests, putting these materials together, getting all the stuff together. Yes, that definitely takes time. But hopefully at the end of the day, like, you feel like it's also an incredible opportunity to sort of celebrate all that you've done, and also to get excited about what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Anton, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Such a pleasure talking with you, and best of luck to Pride at Darden as you go forth with your movie nights, Ramba, and all these exciting things you have planned.
Thanks so much, Brett.
And that was my interview with Anton Dela Cruz, a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2024 and the president of the Pride at Darden student organization. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.